My name is Deacon Ron, and I've traveled to many of our sponsor sites and seen many of the children in our missions, those waiting to be sponsored and those that are already part of our sponsorship program. I've seen the pain of children living without hope for the future, but I've also seen the joy of children in our sponsorship program, how it has changed their lives and how it has given them hope for a better tomorrow. Their life journeys need to be heard, and it starts with you by taking on the Chalice Challenge and saying with love, support, and prayers, I can tell your story.
Chalice is the largest Canadian Catholic child and senior sponsorship program. We work with many missionaries around the world. We reach out with support, prayer, love to around 50,000 children and seniors, working directly through the missionaries, helping in many, many different ways. And I decided to travel to some of these countries to become a witness for the children whose stories are often not heard. And something I discovered was that my neighborhood suddenly got larger. My neighbor wasn't just the person who lives beside me. My neighbor is also the thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions even of people around the world, all brothers and sisters. And so I want to share with you some of their stories. Let's go to Bolivia. If you were to land your plane on your trip to Bolivia at the capital city of La Paz, which is located up by Peru, you'd get off the plane and you'd start breathing like this. Now, why do you think that you'd be breathing like that? Think about this for a minute. Well, it isn't because it's so warm there, because in La Paz, it's actually quite cool. You often have to wear a light jacket. And it isn't because the air is polluted. No, the air is quite clean there. In your mind, if you were thinking to yourself, I know the answer. The answer is that it's because it's high up in the mountains and the air is thinner there. Then you'd be right. You see, we have to have a larger capacity in our lungs to be able to take in that air, to get more of that air in order to breathe properly. Now, something I find amazing about all of this is that the people in La Paz have larger lungs than we do. Isn't God amazing to be able to adapt their bodies so they are able to live in that area? But if you were to land your plane down in the lower area in Santa Cruz, near the border of Paraguay, it's quite lowlands there. It's not anywhere near the mountains. In fact, it's quite warm. At times it's quite hot there. And you'd be able to breathe okay. It took me 3 weeks to travel from Santa Cruz up to La Paz, and as I was traveling, my body sort of adapted a bit. And so by the time I got to La Paz, I could breathe okay, but I was tired all the time. We work with many mission sites in Bolivia, but my first stop was in a rural area called Yapacani. They actually grow rice there. And in Yapacani, I stayed for about, when I travel, I usually stay in parishes of the missions where we serve. And this particular parish was run by the Salesians, John Bosco group, and this is the parish, this is the church. And while I was there, I discovered that I didn't have a sponsor child from Bolivia. And wherever I go, I like to sponsor a child so I can meet them. And so I look through the files, and I usually sponsor an older boy, because older boys are the hardest to find a sponsor for. And so I looked through the files, and I found this one fellow who wanted to become a teacher, but his education funds were just about gone. He wasn't able to travel on really to high school. So I said, yeah, I think I want to sponsor him. And they said, well, why don't we go out and visit him? We were going to go out to his village anyway, and you'll get to meet him. Later that week, we spent about 4 hours on a road like this, getting out to the village where my future sponsor child lived. His name is Jacob, by the way. And the roads were horrible. When we get out to Jacob's village, there was an elementary school there, and they knew we were coming, but they didn't really know yet that I had chosen Jacob. And while we were there, they put on some cultural activities, such as dances and also songs. And if you look very closely in this picture, the boy with the dark blue shirt in the first row is Jacob. He still didn't know that I had chosen him. And after he finished that song, I went up to him and asked him if I could be his sponsor. He was very happy because he wanted to continue his education. Jacob took me to meet his family, his mother, his brother, and sister. That's the house behind them where they live. And it's there that I learned more about Jacob's dream about going to school and becoming a teacher. Now, Jacob has a lot of challenges, a lot of hurdles. You see, in this village, very few of the children have ever gone to high school, and very few have ever finished high school. Jacob is a very good student, but he's a shy boy. And in order for him to go to high school, he's going to have to move 4 to 5 hours away to a village in a town area, actually, where he really doesn't know anybody. He's going to have to live with people he doesn't know. And he's never been away from his village before, so it's going to be very, very difficult for him. But my prayers are with him. Here we are, still in Jacob's village, and one of the volunteers from the mission is translating a sponsor's letter to their sponsor child. And a very interesting thing about Yapacani, there's no post office there. And so writing letters or corresponding like this is a very foreign thing to the people. But they really, really enjoy. You can see it on the girl's face. They really are excited about getting any correspondence from their sponsors. And they do write back. The day after we left Jacob's village, we went to this school, St. Joseph's School. It's a typical rural school in Bolivia. It's not far from the mission, actually. And it's for grades 1 through 8. And that's one of the 3 classrooms behind them. Now, if you were to look at everything that you have in your own classroom, on the walls, on your desks, on the floors, there's not one thing that you can name that you have in your classroom that they would have in their classroom. They don't even have a floor. They have a dirt floor. There's no desks, there's no chairs, there's no pencils, there's no books, there's no paper, there's no chalkboard. Nothing that you could name that you have that they have. And yet they are very serious about their education. You know, some of these children will walk as much as 5 kilometers one way barefoot to come to school. They believe that education is a possible way, not a guarantee, but a possible way of changing their life. And so these children study very, very hard. Now let's pretend that you are at the school, okay? Now you're sitting on the dirt floor. It's very hot. The bugs or mosquitoes around, as you see, there's no screens on the windows. And you're sitting there and the teacher says, let's do math. Well, she can't say, take out your math books because they have no books. And she can't say, take out your pencils and paper because they have none. And so how they would learn is she would stand in front of them and she'd recite, 1 plus 1 is, and they'd say, 2. She'd say, repeat after me again. 2 plus 2 is, I hope you said 4. I was going to say 5. Anyway, that's how they learn. So it has to be difficult learning and teaching there. But they're determined to get an education. This fellow was looking at me like that because I just took some balloons out of my pack. He's hoping I'm going to give him one. Balloons are a big thing. Now, think about this. If you were to get up Christmas morning and all you had for presents under the tree was a new pencil and a small eraser, would you be happy? Probably not. But you know, one of the best gifts you could give a child like this is a pencil that's never been sharpened. They've never owned their own pencil, new pencil like that. In fact, when I was in Haiti over Christmas, that's all the children received was a pencil and eraser. And they were happy, for sure. Sometimes we forget that most people in the world live differently than we do. I traveled on to the third largest city in Bolivia, called Cochabamba. Cochabamba is a very poor city with lots of children, very few schools, and very few teachers. And if you get behind in your homework there, there's no one there to help you. And so the education department asked us to set up some after-school programs. They're important for many reasons, but I think one of the top reasons is pictured in this fellow with the red bowl. He was sitting across from me. That's his third bowl of food. And you know, he knows he has to really get as much as he can because he won't have anything to eat like that for 24 hours. Another great reason for these after-school programs is that we've hired a teacher for everyone. And the children are helped with their homework when they come to these programs, and you don't have to be sponsored to come to the programs. The children are very serious about their studies. They believe that education is a possible way, not guaranteed, but possible way to change their lives, and they really work hard on their homework and studies. Anybody here have any chores to do at home? Perhaps walking the dog or taking out the garbage? Well, you know, those are common chores for us here in North America. But in my travels to so many poorer countries around the world, I discovered that the children have much different work. And you know, it's not an option. They can't say, do I have to? They know they have to. In order to help their family to survive, they have to contribute. And here are some examples of children in Bolivia who have adult jobs. For instance, the fellow in the upper left-hand corner, he's about 13 years old, going on 14, and he works as an auto mechanic. The boy in the right-hand corner is about 9. He gets about $2 for about 12 hours work unloading bananas at the market each Saturday. The two boys on the bottom, they work about 15, 18 hours on the weekend washing cars. They would make about $4 each. And the girl in the right-hand corner works at the market with her mother on the weekends and directly after school. Now, I was talking to the two fellows who wash cars, and I said to them, is that what you want to do when you grow up? And they said, oh no, one wants to be a doctor, one wants to be a lawyer. It's possible. They have a dream. I said, well, what do you have to do in order to make that happen? They told me, well, we have to study hard. We have to work hard. And they really do. The city of Cochabamba is in sort of a valley, surrounded by hills. And if you look around the hills, you'll see thousands of these little small shacks, like the one in the upper left corner. These are rented by the poor. No water. Most have no source of electricity. And this lady wanted to show me her house, and we started up this steep mountain trail, and when we get up to the house, I noticed how small it was. And she was telling me that since she doesn't have any water there at the house, she has to buy her water in the city and lug it up on her back. And so you don't waste water for baths, water that you purchased. No, you wait till it rains. And so as we got closer to the house, the dirty curtain that was the door moved, and these two little ones came out. Little girl is 2, and her babysitter is her 4-year-old brother. They're alone in that house for up to 12 hours a day. You see, there's no such thing as daycare. There's no money for babysitters. In order to survive, the children have to stay by themselves, and so many children live in that dangerous situation in little houses here along the hillsides. If you have time, listen to the poem called Chico. It tells about their story and the stories of others here in Bolivia. In Cochabamba, many children have been abandoned on the streets. Perhaps they're runaways, perhaps they were born there or abandoned. And I was able to visit a couple of the homes. They have street girls' homes as well as the street boys' homes pictures here. The street boys' home ages 5 to 12. These are boys that the Sisters of Charity had brought in to their mission. This particular home had about 50 boys. And as they get older, they move to the street boys' home for high school that you see in the lower bottom area. Now, in these homes, they get into a routine. They go back to school. They're fed and clothed and rescued from the streets. One thing that you realize when you go to countries like this is that most people in the world live differently than we do. While in Cochabamba, one day, a Franciscan priest, who was in charge of one of the missions we work with there, asked if I'd like to go with him for the day to see some of the ways that they reach out to people in the city. And I said, sure. And so he took me first to what he called a hotel. Now, I thought I knew what a hotel was, but this was much different. You see, if you can't afford to rent or to buy a place for your family, then you'd end up probably renting a space in one of these hotels. Hotels are usually in the basements of large windowless buildings. I took the flashlight, we went down some stairs, and I quickly realized in this particular hotel there were 5 rooms. In each room there were 10 families. Each family had between 4 and 6 people in it. If you look very closely in this picture, you can find 10 houses. Each of those colored mats is a house for between 4 and 6 people. They curl up on that mat at night, and that's their home. All their belongings, this is where they live. In fact, the girl in the picture, she was born there. She calls this home. Every day after school, she comes directly back here, lives in a place, hundreds of people, 1 toilet, no sink, no shower. Now, this little girl really amazes me. You know, she could have been sitting there hungry, hurting, lonely. But when the flashlight lit up her face, she gave me this very special gift. She was smiling. And I thought to myself two things. First of all, oh, there you are, Jesus. And secondly, I don't smile enough here in Canada. Smile doesn't even cost a penny, and yet it does make a difference. Here is a typical one-room house in La Paz in Bolivia. Any different than yours? Houses are much different in these countries that I've traveled to, where many, many people live in just one room with very few furnishings, a lot with just a dirt floor, no running water, and no electricity. Most people live differently than we do. Think about all the stories you heard today through this presentation. Now in your mind, are you thinking, well, what can I do? Well, there is something that you can do right now, and it doesn't even cost a penny. And through this story, I'll give you a hint as to what it is. See, I visited many schools around the world, like this school in Yapacani, St. Joseph's. And every morning, the students there, before classes, do something that you do. They sing their national anthem, and then they pray. And I was surprised to hear in their prayers that every morning they pray for you. They pray for all the children in North America, that they be happy, that they be healthy, that they have everything God intends them to have. So think about it. Is that something that you can do? These stories need to be heard. And so, who will tell their story?
Most people in our world live differently than we do, but too often they're never seen or heard. Their story needs to be told. And every time you tell their story, they become more real. Every time you tell their story, the chances increase that something will be done to change their life. You can tell their story. Prayer doesn't even cost a penny, and yet it makes a world of difference to those in need. And when you pray, you are sending God's love to someone and letting them know that they are not alone. There are other ways you can help, such as giving a needed gift through our catalog, raising funds to donate towards making a difference through our charity, or sponsoring a child or elder in need. You are a story carrier, and the time to respond is now. Contact Chalice for more ideas or resources. Get involved and believe that you can make a difference.
Take some time now, as an individual or as a class, to think about these questions and talk about them. Thank you for listening. And remember, you are story carriers. So please, tell the stories.